Hello, awakening souls. So, today we are going to dive into something so powerful, something that most of us don't even realize is shaping our lives, and that is our beliefs. So, the way that we think, the subconscious mind, the patterns that are running in the background, they control over 95% of our reality. I want you to think about that. And we're probably being quite generous with that number. So 95% of what we think, what we feel, how we act and behave is all being pushed and pulled by our subconscious mind. So when we're not even really thinking, we're just reacting. We're not consciously creating our life, but we're reacting to all of the chaos, all of the things that are going around us. So here's the good news. Beliefs can be changed. And when we change our beliefs, this is where we can really change our lives. So today we are going to be talking about how to rewire our mind, how to break free from old conditioning, and how to start consciously creating our reality. So if you are with me, I'd love for you to drop me a comment and tell me how this feels. What is it bringing up for you as you think about, oh my God, I am thinking, behaving, and acting, I'm feeling from my unconscious, my subconscious mind. So let's discuss it. We'll break it down. So if you can think of your mind as a program. So I always think of us as being like a laptop or a smartphone. And if you think of us that way, you go, okay, so you get your phone, it's brand new, and it comes with all of these different programs on it. And our subconscious mind, it was really formed between the ages of about 0 to 7, 0 to 8 years old. And when I say 0, I even mean in utero. So keep that in mind. This is before you're even born, we begin the programming. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about epigenetics, when we're talking about ancestral. So they say that it takes 7 generations for us to really break a pattern. That's epigenetics. And why is that? Well, first and foremost, a female is born with all of her eggs. So that means that you were in your grandmother's uterus. And over and over and over it goes. So the ripple effect, the resonance of every experience and emotion that they have, we get some resonance, some residue of those experiences that permeate each of us. And that's why we can break a cycle, and yet our children will often behave or act similar to one of our parents. They'll have similarities, and that is the reason for it. So epigenetics comes into that. And that's when we don't have an experience that we can really explain our reactions to things, but it could be something where we're getting the residue of a previous generation. That's the subconscious mind. And so if you think of ourselves as a supercomputer or as a smartphone, then we buy that phone, or we get the laptop, and it already has all these programs in it. We don't choose them. It's not like we buy our computers anymore, just blank slates where we have to do everything. It comes with a lot of information already programmed in. And that's because before the age of 8, we're most susceptible. We're absorbing the world around us. And that's because we are mostly in a theta brainwave state. And a theta brainwave state is the state that we often go into. If I'm guiding meditation, I'll put on theta waves. And why am I doing that? Is to open up the mind to be able to take in new information, new concepts. And so this is where we live mostly prior to the age of 8 years old. And so everything that we were told as a child about money, about love, about self-worth, about success, all of these things, they become our programming. And this is important because it's not just coming from our parents. So we can have great parents, a great family life, but what was going on in the world around us? What was on the news? What was being listened to on the radio when we were in vehicles? What was being said and taught when we were in church, at school, daycare, with our grandparents? All of these environments are environments that we are absorbing information from. This also includes the neighborhood. So all of these things matter, and they all build in to create the pre-programming of the subconscious mind. And so, just like when you get a laptop or a smartphone, you get it with all this information, and that's great. And then you want to put something new in. And those two pieces of information might not work well together. So all of a sudden you bring in this new program and it doesn't seem to work in conjunction, hand in hand, with a program that's already on your system. Maybe you need to delete a system, like deleting cookies. And so we need to delete things to be able to make the new program run properly. And that is how it works with our conscious and our subconscious mind. So when we're stuck in patterns that don't serve us, it's often because of unconscious or subconscious programming. And it's not because we're failing. And this is important because often we judge ourselves as failing or not good enough, or, I'm trying and I'm trying, but the same old pattern keeps showing up in my life. Why is that? What am I not doing right? Well, if I'm consciously thinking I am worthy, but I have some subconscious beliefs that I'm unworthy that have been not only programmed originally, and when I say programmed, that doesn't mean that my mom looked at me and said, "You're unworthy." It's the way that I perceived my environment as well. So if I perceived that I wasn't worthy because my mom put more time and effort into work than she did into playing and spending time with me, or because bad things happened and so I wasn't worthy, I perceived that as meaning I wasn't good enough, I wasn't worthy of a good experience, then I'm going to take that forward. And the way that I'm going to take that forward is because the subconscious mind or the psyche is constantly seeking to prove itself right, whether the right is good or bad. And it's doing that as a way to protect us. And so if I have this belief that I'm unworthy, then I'm going to notice all the other times in my life. See, you're unworthy. That person picked a different friend instead of you. It's because you're unworthy. Over and over and over again. And it just keeps embedding deeper and deeper and deeper, compiling supporting information that is true. And it doesn't matter if I was chosen or told I was worthy, that I was given all these other examples of how I am worthy. If the belief is deeply embedded in first that I'm unworthy, that's the one that my psyche's proving right, and it disregards. So that's why you'll have 20 people tell you, you're smart, you're pretty, whatever. And then one person says, "Oh, yeah, kind of a funny nose, or your smile's crooked," and it sticks. And you're like, "What is that?" Well, if you were really young and something was said about, balance of your face or your nose or something was picked on, that one thing deeply embeds in, and the psyche goes, "Whoa, we better make sure we don't hear that again." And it starts tracking for every other time that it hears that, because that hurt. It didn't hurt to feel that somebody said you were beautiful, but it hurt to feel that you weren't. And that hurt, that pain, is where the psyche, the subconscious mind, is going to want us to not feel that again. And so it's going to look for supporting information to protect itself. All these things are all about safety and survival. We have three main fears that we're always trying to keep ourselves protected from: judgment, rejection, and being unworthy of love. It's all because safety and survival is tribal. And so, of course, if something goes against this, it's going to be an issue. So what I want you to ask yourself is, what were some beliefs I inherited that I never consciously chose? And so that might be that you have a thought that keeps coming up like, "Oh, well, I'm not, well, you're not smart enough to do that, Dawn." Where did that come from? I have tons of confirmation I'm plenty smart enough to do that. So where did it come from? Did it come from when you were, I don't know, grade 2, and a big red line went through your paper from your teacher saying that you weren't a good writer, or she made fun of the way that you were printing your letters? And so you just embedded that deeper in, that subconsciously, I'm not a good writer. What is it? Where did it come from? And so the first way that we get there, and this isn't about blame, we don't want to start blaming our parents and blaming our teachers. Things happen. It is what it is. That's the way that it went down, possibly. Because remember, it was your perception, not necessarily even true. and we all have bad days, and we all say things sometimes we don't mean because we're in a mood. So this is not about us being a victim or activating the child as a way to blame other people. This is about us becoming aware, know thyself, and on the spiritual journey that we are all on, the very first thing that we are meant to do is remember, know thyself. Who am I? You are not your body. You're the one that has been experiencing your body, which is a process, not a solid object, that has been experiencing your body when you were just an infant, when you were a toddler, when you were a child, an adolescent, all the way into adulthood. So you're not your body. You're the one experiencing your body, and you're not your thoughts. You're the one that's aware of thinking, that's aware of thought. Where'd it come from? And thoughts are driven by our beliefs, by our programming. And the beliefs is the part we want to get into so we can change the way we think, because it is in downward causation. We understand that first there's a thought, then there's an emotion, and then there's a physical experience. So first we have the thought. Say you're driving down the road, guy cuts you off. First thought comes out of your mind is, what a dick. Then we have the emotion, irritation, frustration, outrage, justification, whichever one you want to choose. And then we have a reaction. And that could be step on the brake, step on the gas. That could be flip them the bird. Whatever your reaction is, look at them so you know what, stupid people look like. Whatever that is, but you had a thought, then you had a feeling, and then you had, or a thought and emotion, and then you had a feeling or physical experience that you reacted with. And that could even be cuts you off, that's dangerous, he's going too fast, you feel fear, heart rate goes up, blood pressure rises, cortisol jumps into your body. Thought, emotion, experience. And that is downward causation and how everything within our physical realm gets created. And so that's what we're looking at here. So science confirms that our thoughts are what shape our reality. And in the book Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton, he shows that our thoughts literally change our biology. And so as I just explained to you with the car, the same thing goes all throughout our life. So in that book, Biology of Belief, Bruce Lipton is done in the 80s, and he is a professor at a university and teaching medicine, and he is a research professor. And so in the lab, they are studying two identical cells from a single strand of DNA, and one cell goes into a petri dish into one lab, and the other cell goes into another lab. And in one lab, the cell becomes diseased, and in the other one, the cell stays at ease. And they're like, oh my gosh, what did we do wrong? And they're looking at the dish, and his professor says, no, don't look at the cell, look at its environment. And he doesn't just mean the petri dish, but look at the lab that they were in. And so when they zoomed out from just looking at the dish, and they kind of looked at the whole environment, what was the case was the cell that stayed at ease, the people that were working in that lab were getting along, playing classical music. It was an enjoyable work environment. But the cell that became diseased was in a lab where the researchers were fighting. There was a lot of negativity, a lot of vile behavior and language, negative music. So all these things affected the cell and had a cell go into a state of dis-ease. And even break down the word: at ease, healthy; diseased, unhealthy. And so the environment changes the structure, the quality of the cell. And this is why living and working and moving through negative environments has a negative impact on the biology of our body. And so this is how our thoughts literally change our environment. So if I have the thought, this is a negative, this is a unhealthy home, this is an unhealthy home, this is dangerous, I'm not safe here, I'm not safe here, then you can even see how that happens. There's that thought, but what are my feelings that are going with that? I have a feeling of fear, of anxiousness, of apprehension, a constant state of awareness, of alertness. All of this is activating my sympathetic nervous system. My blood is moving to my sense organs to sense danger. It's moving into my arms, my hands, my legs, and my feet to run and to fight. So all that blood is not going into my internal organs so that I can repair and get healthy, which is why when we're in a constant state of chronic stress, our immune system starts to break down because our body is not worrying about digesting our food and boosting our immune system. It's worrying about running away from the proverbial tiger. And so this is what we're talking about here. And our beliefs are the baseline of this because it's our beliefs that drive our thoughts. So if I believe that I'm perfectly safe no matter what environment I'm in because I've got my back and I know how to take care of myself, good to go. But that's very different if I don't feel like, oh, is this a safe environment? Am I okay to think? Can I speak? Then I'm going to have a totally different physical response to my environment. And you have this going for a long time, we get what we call complex PTSD, single event PTSD, multiple events or multiple events or an environment lived in or worked in over a long period of time becomes complex PTSD, post-traumatic stress. And now they call it a syndrome versus a disorder. And so we want to be able to understand why is that happening. But remember, you can change your beliefs. And if we can change our beliefs, we can change our thoughts. And if we can change our thoughts, we change our emotions, we change our physical experience. And the quest that I was on when this came to me, actually, I'll back that up. When this book came to me, it was recommended by a friend. And I had just about 6 weeks before this, I had been in 2 car accidents, less than a week apart, had what they call concurrent concussion, like being double bounced on a trampoline. After 6 weeks, finally, I was put on short-term disability, told I needed 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks off to try and recover. In that time, I went on a little road trip for a weekend with my husband, met with a friend. She said, don't listen to Western science. You need to check out Bruce Lipton, his work, check out Joe Dispenza, his work, the Heart Math Institute. You're extremely powerful. You're fully capable of healing yourself. And so that kind of started me on this quest. And it was after listening to this book and listening to Joe Dispenza's book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, that I started with the question, how come some people spontaneously heal and other people don't? And these books were giving the foundation to that. And as I would go through this journey, it would become a spiritual journey. I'd start listening to The Course in Miracles. I'd listen to the work of Carolyn Mace, of Wayne Dyer, Louise Hay, and all of these teachers, and then Byron Katie, they all kept taking me to this place of understanding, how do we heal? How do we heal? And even going, then you can get into older stuff, The Art of War, Lao Tzu, the Tao Te Ching, any of the work of the Buddha, of Jesus. They're all bringing us back to the same baseline. So whether you want to come at it from science, the modern day mystic, or you want to come at it from spirituality, we're still coming to the same place, which is we are extraordinarily powerful. We just don't know thyself. And that's why it is imperative to understand that our purpose in this world is to know thyself. And once we know, then we start to embody that knowledge. And within that embodiment is moving away from these thoughts that create our dis-ease, our suffering, to move us back into a state of being at ease or peace, which is our birthright. And so that is what this journey is really about. And so first we know thyself, then we embody that ourselves, and then we help others do the same. We all share the same purposes in this world. We just do it in our own unique ways. And so that is really what we're coming into here. So our mind influences how our body functions, how we heal, and what we attract into our life. So remember in the beginning, I said, if I'm thinking, oh, I'm worthy of abundance, but I have this belief deeply embedded in me that I don't even remember, that is, I'm unworthy, then I'm going to create a dichotomy. And so this is where the law of attraction, law of magnetic attraction, or this principle really comes into play. Because if I'm consciously, 5% of me is doing my affirmations and setting my intentions, and I'm doing all the right things, but subconsciously I have these other things that are playing under the radar, just like a laptop, the program's not going to run properly. And so what we could do is, if I'm really consciously thinking about it, I'm really working on my thoughts, and I'm saying and doing the right things, I might attract $1,000, but I'll get a bill for $997 when my hot water tank blows. So why does that happen? It's like I can't get ahead. Every time I make more money, I just have more debts. And many of us have experienced this. So why does that happen? And it's this dichotomy, because if I haven't dealt with my beliefs, then I'm going to have this issue of it's still running in the background, and I'm just trying to overlay things on top of it, but it's still a problem. Like the old story of the princess and the pea. You just keep putting more mattresses on top, but you just need to remove the pea in the beginning. And that's what our beliefs are like. And so we need to understand that we're not a victim of our genes. I'm going to say it again. You are not a victim of your genes. You are the creator of your experience. And the reason that genetic things often come into play, if we want to look at this from this exact point of view, is we'll use cancer. Most of us have somebody in our family that has it. So say I have a mom that has cancer. So I am more predisposed to have a similar or the same type of cancer. Something that we don't think about is I often am also going to have the same beliefs as my mother, because where'd they come from? So if I have the same beliefs, and remember, they started in utero. So even if you were adopted. So if I'm going to have the same set of beliefs, I'm going to have similar thought patterns, I'm going to have similar emotional patterns, the monads, the archetypes in the monads, as one or both of my parents. And so I'm going to be more likely, more predisposed to have the same kind of programming as one of my parents had. So even if I'm eating my organic food and I'm doing all these other external things, if I haven't dealt with the belief process, I'm more likely to have a similar experience or outcome as my parents had. And that's why we see what looks like as our genes, we're more predisposed. And part of that is because of the beliefs that really sit underneath. So I hope this is making sense so far. And I really do love having big conversations. So you can either throw a comment in here so we can have a deeper conversation. You can always send me an email, or you can also jump over onto our free private community, the Awakening Circle on Facebook, which is where we love to get into these deeper conversations where it's absolutely safe, no trolls allowed. So keep that in mind. But I'd love to hear, like, what is shifting for you as you hear this, as you embody this. This was a major shift for me in my life. Even with my brain injury, when I was first listening to this, it was like, okay, here we go. Things are about to start changing. And so then the third place comes into this is, how do we do this? How do we rewire our mind and break free from these limiting beliefs? So 3 steps. There's always 1 to 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 steps, right? So 3 steps. So first, we want to become aware of the pattern. Awareness is key. And remember, this is what it means where we say, oh, knowledge is power. Knowledge of yourself. That's power. Power is knowing what's going on underneath. And so we want to become aware of our programs. So we want to notice the thoughts that keep showing up. And sometimes these thoughts, up until the moment that you start this work, you won't even be really aware that you have them. Like that thought that's there, like you go to do something, oh, you're not smart enough to do that. It's so normal to have that thought. You're not even aware of it. In my work, in body code work, we would know that as a broadcast message, constantly there under the surface. So there's lots of different ways we can do, emotional freedom techniques, some tapping. We can do body code or emotion code. You can do craniosacral. There's all sorts of different work that you can do to help support you as you come into this awareness, or help you have the awareness of what's there if you really feel locked down. So do you tell yourself, I'm not good enough. I can't trust myself. I'm always struggling. Whatever that is, notice the words, the language that's in there in the background. And once you become aware of that belief, this is when we have the power to change it. I highly recommend that you either I'm a big believer in writing. There's lots of neuroscience behind writing things down. So whether that is a fancy journal or like myself, I just carry a cheap dollar store notebook with me. And so whatever you want to use to write your stuff down every day, make notes. I like keeping a notebook close by or pad of paper so I can make notes. Once I can become aware of something, I can write it down and start doing the work on it. And so become aware of it so that we can start changing things. And then two, I'm going to watch the language on this. It always gets said is like we want to replace the belief with a more expansive one. We don't want to really trade one belief for another, but we do want to reframe our beliefs. So instead of I'm not good enough, it could be the reframing of it of I'm learning to trust myself more every day. There are two kinds of people. There are people that can do affirmations. So they could move from I'm not good enough. So they start doing the affirmation, I am good enough. I am good enough. I am worthy. I'm, whatever, I am enough, however you want to place that. Or there's the second kind of person, which is the kind of person I am, where affirmations don't work. And the reason affirmations don't work for me is because as I say that, I just feel like I'm a liar. I'm just BSing myself. So then instead, I have that other one, I'm a liar, I can't trust myself. And so I'm actually undermining my own confidence in myself. And if you're that kind of a person as well, then I highly recommend the language of I choose. Now, Lynn McTaggart, she created or wrote the book, The Power of Eight. She has all sorts of science-based work in intentions. You can also use the language of I intend. I like the language of I choose because I'm joining my willpower with my voice. So I'm taking my third energy center, I'm linking it with my fifth energy center of my mental consciousness of communication. So I choose to be worthy. And then I can activate and draw energy, emotion into that and bring in my heart. And so I'm bringing physical, ethereal, and bridging the two of them. And so I do encourage you to play with your language and see which one feels right for you. Like sense into your body, close your eyes, say them both, and notice what comes up for you without judging them as right or wrong, good or bad. Doesn't matter. It's just the way that it is. You judging yourself just takes it back further. It's just one more thing we have to unwind. So don't get into judging yourself. Be open. Just explore what kind of a person am I? One's not better than the other. They just are what they are. So keep that in mind. Your brain doesn't need a dramatic shift. We just need a new direction. And so you can think of micro shifts. We want little 1% shifts that we're trying to get through. So instead of I always struggle, we don't need to move to, everything's easy. That would seem kind of like BS, really, if you were trying to make that big jump. But it could be I'm learning to create ease in my life, or I'm choosing to find the ease in my life. I'm choosing to experience ease in my life. So play with the language of what feels good for you. And then 3, we want to anchor in this new belief, this new way of being, this new way of thinking in with action. And so embodiment. So remember, I said know thyself and then embody it. And so as we anchor, we want to do this through repetition. So the brain learns through repetition. I don't have my daily journal sitting beside me right now. But usually I do. And I write down in my journal every single morning. So every day I start my day, I write down the date and I begin my journal each day the exact same way. And that is, it says, I am so happy and grateful now that. And so if you were doing this, it may be, right now, I'm really big on being in alignment with my values, being in integrity. So right now, today, I think I had it written down. I am so happy and grateful now that I'm living in constant alignment with my highest self as a conscious empowerment coach and thought leader. That was like me really embodying that place of anything that's an unworthiness. And so how do I feel when I get into that? I do a lot of my work hands on heart. And I'm like, okay, how do I feel when I say that? I feel excited. I feel open. I feel worthy. And so what comes up for you for emotions when you're here? So every small choice that we make We want it to be in alignment with our new beliefs, but we're enforcing it. And so what would that look like? What would it look like to be in alignment? I'm going to go into my values and start, okay, how do I need to act? How do I need to speak? How am I going to respond? Those are all questions I'm going to come into it 1% at a time, little tiny shifts, 365 days of 1% compounding interest, you're a whole new direction by the end of the year. So don't think of them as having to be these big leaps and bounds. 1%. Who do I choose to be today? 1% better than I was yesterday. 1% more aware. 1% more conscious. What do you need to do there? So if you're ready to start shifting your beliefs today, drop me a comment. Like I said, I love interaction with everybody. So remember, your subconscious beliefs have been running the show, but we get to rewrite the script. It doesn't have to remain this way. We can consciously, 1% shifts allow us to make these changes. If you're ready to break free from old conditioning, come and join us. Join us in the Awakening Circle. Make comments. Let's have some conversation and community here. And please hit the bell, subscribe, so you can hear and watch all the other videos that we're going to be doing on here. And stay tuned, because coming up in April, we're going to be starting our new podcast, Sovereignty Rising, where we will be having weekly conversations every Friday about spiritualism, the practicality of it, the science of it, and how we really awaken, become conscious, and become sovereign one. I hope that this video brought you value. I would love to hear from you. So please go ahead and throw me some comments. Let's have conversation. See the light in you, and it is brilliant. Brightest of blessings.